Welcome back. You asked for it, and here it is. Part 2 of the story that's got everyone talking. If you missed how Sienna got tangled with Kang Minho, Part 1 is right there in the description. Now, let's see what happens when the enforcer decides gratitude isn't enough, and protection comes with a price Sienna never agreed to pay. Sienna Clarke saved Kang Minho's mentor, proved herself under pressure, and earned something she didn't ask for, his claim. Now he's moved her into his world completely, a luxury condo that's more cage than home, and the dangerous line between their agreement and something deeper just got crossed. He kissed her like he owned her, and maybe he does. But when that phone rings again in the middle of the night, Sienna's about to learn that being Minho's protected asset means walking into hell whenever he calls. And this time, the patient bleeding out in a warehouse isn't some stranger. This time, the stakes are personal. The kiss haunted her for weeks. Sienna would be sitting in lecture, trying to focus on cellular metabolism, and suddenly she'd feel the phantom pressure of his lips on hers, the possessive grip of his hand on her jaw. She'd be studying in her apartment and catch herself touching her mouth, remembering the heat and the intensity and the absolute certainty in the way he'd claimed her. It wasn't romantic, not in any traditional sense. It was a declaration, a brand, a promise wrapped in a threat. The second phone sat on her desk next to the emergency one, both of them silent, both of them waiting. Days turned into weeks and neither one rang. Sienna threw herself into her studies, aced her finals, and started the spring semester with a GPA that put her at the top of her class. Without the financial stress, without the exhaustion of working overnight shifts, she was thriving academically in ways she'd never imagined possible. But she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being owned in some fundamental way that had nothing to do with their original agreement. Minho had said she was his, and she was starting to understand what that meant in his world. It meant protection, yes, but it also meant control. It meant safety, but it also meant isolation. She found herself looking over her shoulder, wondering if his people were following her, keeping tabs on her movements and her choices, reporting back on her movements and her choices. 6 weeks after that night in his estate, the regular phone finally rang. Not the emergency phone with its harsh mechanical tone, but the sleek new one vibrating with a soft purr against her desk. It was 11 p.m. on a Friday night, and Sienna had been reviewing anatomy notes, preparing for an exam the following week. She picked up. "Hello? Sienna, how are you?" Minho's voice, smooth and controlled, none of the urgency from last time. The casual question threw her. "I'm fine, studying." "Good. Your semester is going well?" "Yes, all A's so far." "Excellent. I'd expect nothing less. I'm calling because I'd like to see you. Dinner tomorrow night. I'll send a car at 7. There was a pause, and she could hear the smile in his voice. It wasn't really a request, despite the polite phrasing. "I have plans tomorrow night." She lied, testing the boundaries, seeing how much freedom she actually had. "Cancel them. This isn't optional, Sienna. I've given you space, allowed you to settle into your new life, but we need to talk. There are things you need to understand about our arrangement. 7 p.m. Wear something nice." No anger in his voice, just certainty. The line went dead before she could respond. The car that arrived the next evening wasn't the Genesis. It was a Mercedes S-Class, black and gleaming, with a different driver who held the door open for her with professional courtesy. Sienna had chosen a simple black dress, elegant but not too formal, her locks styled in an updo that showed off her shoulders. She felt nervous in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with anticipation. The drive took them back into the hills, but to a different location this time. Not the sprawling estate, but a modern restaurant perched on a hillside with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu and required reservations months in advance. Minho was waiting at a private table in the back, separated from the main dining room by frosted glass panels. He stood when she approached, and Sienna felt her breath catch. He was in a dark suit, perfectly tailored, his hair styled back, and the sight of him brought everything rushing back. The surgery, the kiss, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. "You look beautiful," he said simply, pulling out her chair. "Thank you," she sat, hyper-aware of him as he took his own seat across from her. A waiter appeared immediately with wine, pouring without asking, then disappearing just as quickly. Minho lifted his glass. "To unexpected partnerships." Sienna clinked her glass against his, took a sip of wine that probably cost more than her old monthly rent, and waited. "I've been monitoring your progress. Your professors speak highly of you. Top of the class, exceptional performance, exactly what I expected. But I wanted to see you in person to discuss the next phase of our arrangement." "Next phase?" "You've proven yourself in a crisis. Now I need to know you can maintain discretion and professionalism in less critical situations. There will be times when my people need medical attention that isn't life-threatening, but still requires someone trustworthy. Minor injuries, health monitoring, preventative care. I want you to become familiar with my key associates, the people who matter in my organization. That requires trust on both sides." Sienna set down her fork. "You want me to be your organization's private physician?" "Eventually, yes. Once you have your MD, you'll essentially run all medical operations for my people. But for now, I want you to understand the scope of what you've agreed to, and I want you to understand what my protection means." "What does it mean?" "It means you're mine to protect, Sienna. No one touches you, no one threatens you, no one harms you in any way. But it also means you don't date, you don't get involved with anyone else, you don't create complications that could compromise your position or my trust in you. You're too valuable to risk." His eyes locked on hers, dark and intense. The possessiveness in his voice sent a shiver through her. "That wasn't part of our original agreement. Our agreement changed the moment you saved the man that matters most to me in this world, the moment I realized what you're capable of, what you mean to my operation. The rules changed, Sienna. I'm not apologizing for that. I'm telling you how things are." Before she could respond, his regular phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression shifted instantly from smooth control to focused intensity. He stood abruptly. "We have to go, now." "What's wrong?" "One of my people was injured in a territorial dispute. It's bad. I need you." They were in the Mercedes within minutes, but not heading back to the estate. The driver pushed the car hard, weaving through traffic, heading towards the warehouse district on the south side of the city. Sienna's heart hammered as Minho made rapid calls in Korean, his voice sharp and commanding, organizing something she couldn't fully understand. "What happened?" she asked when he ended the last call. "A meeting went wrong. One of my senior associates took a blade to the abdomen. He's conscious but losing blood. We can't risk a hospital. The wound happened in the middle of a negotiation that's still active. Taking him to an ER would show weakness, would invite more attacks. I need you to stabilize him on site." "On site?" "Minho, I need proper equipment, surgical conditions." "You'll have what I can provide. This is the reality of what you signed up for, Sienna. Not everything happens in a surgical suite. Sometimes it happens in a warehouse with questionable lighting and hostile parties watching. Can you handle that?" She thought about saying no, about demanding he take her home, about walking away from it all. But the truth was, she'd made her choice weeks ago when she picked up that phone. "Yes, I can handle this." The warehouse district was exactly as grim as she'd imagined. Dark streets, abandoned buildings, the kind of area where bad things happened and nobody reported them. The Mercedes pulled up to a loading dock where several vehicles were already parked, including 2 black USVs that looked identical to the one that picked up Minho's cardholder from the diner months earlier. Minho got out first, and Sienna followed, her heels completely impractical for the cracked concrete. He must have noticed because he said something sharp in Korean to one of his men, who immediately disappeared and returned moments later with a pair of sneakers in her size. Someone had brought a go bag prepared for exactly this scenario. She changed shoes quickly and Minho led her into the warehouse. The space was massive, dimly lit by industrial lights hanging from the ceiling. There were two distinct groups of men, one Korean, one she couldn't identify, maintaining a careful distance from each other. The tension was thick enough to choke on, violence simmering just below the surface. In the center of the Korean group, sitting on a chair with two men supporting him, was the injured associate. He was maybe 40, stocky and muscular, his face pale with pain and blood loss. His shirt had been cut away and someone had packed the wound with what looked like clean rags, but blood was seeping through steadily. Sienna's clinical mind kicked in immediately, shoving aside the fear and the surreal nature of the situation. She moved to the injured man, crouching down to his level. "I'm Sienna. I'm here to help you. Can you tell me your name?"
"Day. It hurts like hell."
"I know. I'm gonna make it better, but I need to look at the wound first. This is going to hurt." She carefully pulled back the makeshift bandaging, and her stomach sank. Deep laceration, maybe 4 inches long across his left lower abdomen. It was bleeding steadily but not spurting, which meant no major arterial involvement, but it was deep enough that she couldn't see the bottom of it. Possible peritoneal penetration, possible bowel involvement. This needed a hospital, needed a CT scan, needed a real surgical team. But that wasn't an option. "Minho, I need supplies. Surgical kit, sutures, sterile saline, and local anesthetic if you have it, and better lighting. I need to explore this wound and close it properly, or he's going to develop peritonitis and die within 48 hours.
You have 5 minutes. Then we resume our discussion, or we consider this negotiation terminated."
One of the men from the other group called out in accented English. Minho's jaw tightened, but he nodded to his people, and suddenly there was organized chaos. Someone produced a proper trauma kit. Someone else set up a battery-powered surgical light, and within 3 minutes, Sienna had what she needed, spread out on a clean tarp on the floor. She worked fast. Infiltrating the wound edges with local anesthetic meant exploring the laceration with steady hands. The warehouse was silent except for Day's harsh breathing and the occasional murmur from the watching men. She was hyper-aware of the audience, of the danger, of the fact that she was performing surgery in the middle of what was essentially a hostage situation. The wound was deep but clean. The blade had missed the peritoneum by millimeters, tracking through muscle and fat, but not penetrating into the abdominal cavity. Lucky, incredibly lucky. She irrigated it thoroughly, checking for any debris, then began closing it layer by layer. Deep sutures first, bringing the muscle back together, then the fascia, then the skin. Her hands were steady, her focus absolute, and she blocked out everything else except the task in front of her. 20 minutes later, she tied off the final suture and applied a pressure dressing. Done. The wound is closed. He needs oral antibiotics starting immediately, wound checks every 12 hours for the next 3 days, and if he develops fever, increased pain, or any signs of infection, he needs a hospital regardless of the risk. Understood? Minho translated rapidly in Korean, and Day nodded weakly.
"Thank you,"
he said in English, his voice rough but sincere. Minho helped Sienna to her feet, his hand warm and firm on her elbow. He turned to the other group, switched to speaking Korean, and Sienna watched as the tension gradually eased. Whatever negotiation had been interrupted seemed to resume, the two groups moving closer together, voices rising and falling in a language she couldn't understand. Minho kept her close, his hand never leaving her arm, a clear signal to everyone present that she was under his protection, untouchable. When the meeting finally concluded 30 minutes later with what looked like grudging agreement between the parties, he led her back to the Mercedes. Once they were inside and moving, Sienna let herself shake. The adrenaline was crashing, and she felt the weight of what she'd just done. Surgery in a warehouse in front of hostile parties with minimal equipment and maximal pressure.
You were magnificent. You didn't hesitate. You didn't let the environment or the danger affect your performance. You saved Day's life, and you did it with an audience of people who would have killed you without hesitation if I hadn't been there. Do you understand how rare that is? How valuable?
Minho said quietly. He reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. Sienna looked at their joined hands, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers, and realized with startling clarity that she was in too deep to get out. She'd crossed too many lines, seen too much, become too entangled in his world, and the worst part was, she wasn't sure she wanted out anymore. "I understand," she whispered.
Good, because you are mine now, Sienna. Completely, and I protect what's mine.
He raised her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles, the gesture somehow more intimate than the kiss they'd shared weeks ago. The car drove them back to her apartment, but Minho walked her to her door, something he'd never done before. He crowded her against the door in the hallway, one hand braced above her head, looking down at her with eyes that burned.
I meant what I said at dinner. No one else. You are mine.
"That's not fair," Sienna protested weakly, but her body was betraying her, leaning toward him.
Nothing about this is fair, but it's how it is. I'll call you soon. Be ready.
He leaned down, his lips brushing her ear. Then he was gone, and Sienna was left standing in her doorway, her heart racing, her mind spinning, knowing that she'd just stepped fully into a world she could never leave. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, hit that like button and smash subscribe because part 3 is going to blow your mind. Drop a comment and tell me, is Sienna making the right choice staying in Minho's world, or should she run while she still can? And what do you think happens next? Let me know your theories below.